The Law School Admission Council suspended LSAT testing in mainland China for the January 2026 LSAT and beyond because organized services were taking the LSAT for applicants and stealing unreleased exams in real time. This was not an isolated incident. This was not the result of rumors. And this discovery forced LSAC to act. But it also exposed a much deeper problem that goes far beyond China. And once you understand that problem, the entire admissions system looks different. Now, most people hear the phrase LSAT cheating scandal and they picture a student sneaking notes, somebody whispering answers, maybe somebody using a phone when they shouldn't have been, but that's not what this was. What happened here crossed a line that fundamentally changes how we should look at the problem of LSAT cheating. There is a huge difference between a single individual breaking the rules and the entire system itself being compromised. If it's just one person here or there cheating, the damage is limited. Of course, it's bad, but it's limited in scope. That person might gain a few points here or there. They might unfairly beat out another applicant, and of course that's wrong, but the system as a whole is still working in that instance. The LSAT is capable of surviving individual cheating because the LSAT is serving tens of thousands of students. It can absorb a little bit of noise here or there. But this situation in China was different. Here, the cheating affected the test itself. Now, these were organized cheating rings that were clever operations because they did three things at the same time. First, they were taking the LSAT by proxy, meaning that in some cases, the registered test taker themselves was not the one taking the LSAT. Somebody else took it for them remotely, not even in the same country in some cases. And from the LSAT's point of view, it was like the right person was taking the test. There were a couple of other cases that made it even worse, though. Second big issue was that unreleased LSAT exams were stolen during the test. In other words, while the test was being taken, the exam content itself was being captured directly. Entire questions, entire sections, and this matters because most LSATs are never released to the public. Those unreleased exams are supposed to remain secret because LSAC reuses them for future LSAT administrations. So the damage is carrying forward for future LSAT administrations. And those exams that were stolen were collected and then resold to future LSAT test takers. In other words, creating private libraries of real LSAT exams that honest students never got to see. So that made the advantage in cheating not just temporary to that LSAT test date, but permanent for months and even years to come. So this is not just one or two people getting away with it. We're talking about future LSAT test takers who unknowingly compete against those who've already seen future material in advance. Now, this is a serious emergency because while cheating attempts are expected, unreleased material being circulated privately is the worst case scenario for any standardized test because you then cannot assume that future exams are secure. You can't fix that problem quietly either, and that's why LSAC discontinued LSAT testing in mainland China for the foreseeable future, starting with this month's January 2026 LSAT administration. And this also affects law schools as well, because when admissions officers hear that unreleased LSAT content has been leaked, they're thinking to themselves, how confident can we be that those scores are legit? This gives them more skepticism. It puts the LSAT under greater scrutiny, and it puts more pressure on high scorers to prove themselves, which means honest students carry part of the cost, not because they were doing anything wrong, but because trust in the entire system has been weakened. And once those unreleased exams are stolen and distributed, the LSAT is a test being systematically mined to benefit future LSAT cheaters. And so this has triggered a serious structural response. And the fundamental issue, in my opinion, is that remote testing is not viable for the future of the LSAT. It is harder to secure than in-person testing. And the technology itself is not necessarily bad, but because it's an arms race. When you're taking the LSAT in person, you've got everybody in the same room, everybody's using approved equipment, proctors can see the entire testing space, and phones, notes, electronic devices are all being controlled. Of course, cheating is always technically possible, but it's a lot more limited, a lot less likely, a lot riskier for the cheaters. But when the LSAT is fully remote, everybody's in a different room. Every room has different furniture, different lighting, different layout. Every computer is different. Every internet connection is different. And Prometric, the testing company, no longer has control over the environment. And when it's in a private space, there's a lot more risk. The attack surface is different in nature. It grows dramatically because instead of having to secure a couple of testing centers, you're now trying to secure thousands of homes, thousands of computers, thousands of networks, thousands of different physical rooms. Each one is unique, which makes enforcement harder and makes cheating easier. And I know that remote proctoring sounds great, but the reality is remote proctoring only shows what the system is able to see. It can't see what's happening off camera. It can't see what's happening on another device. It can't see what's happening inside the operating system of the laptop being used, and it can't see any software running invisibly in the background. The proctor just sees the video feed and the screen. That's it. And if the cheating's happening outside of those boundaries, the system is not going to be able to detect it. And remote tests usually rely heavily on identity checks, which means showing an ID, taking a photo of facial matching, periodic camera checks, and those steps all prevent casual impersonation, but they don't prevent professional impersonation from a serious cheating operation. And if a cheating company can understand the system and prepare for it, they can replay camera feeds, they can mimic normal facial movement, and imitate natural typing and mouse behavior. And at that point, it's verifying a simulation of a test taker, not the test taker itself. And modern cheating is designed to look legit. It's not going to look like cheating. It looks like normal behavior. Typing speed is regular, mouse movements regular, and everything matches what the Prometric company is expecting to see. Security systems can only look for patterns. And when attackers can copy and simulate those patterns, the alarms aren't going to get triggered. And live proctors can't catch everything. They can look for obvious red flags like somebody leaving the room, someone else sitting in that same chair, matching the photo ID or not, someone using a phone during the test, any loud noises, but they cannot inspect the internal processes of a computer or detect hidden software or verify who is actually controlling the keyboard. And it's not a one-to-one ratio. There are far more test takers than there are proctors. And so they're watching many people at the same time, often with delays. And so it makes subtle cheating very hard to detect in real time. And most remote test security happens after the exam ends, like reviewing recordings, analyzing answer patterns, flagging unusual timing or score jumps, all of which creates a delay. And it's possible for a test taker to complete the exam successfully before anybody even realizes something was wrong. And at that point, the score might have already been released, and admissions might have already made a decision on that applicant. And investigations take a lot of time. And the unfortunate fact is that attackers only need to find one weakness in the system, whereas defenders, like Prometric and LSAC, have to protect everything. And cheating services like those being used in mainland China can test their tools repeatedly on different exams and adjust quickly. They can learn from every failure. But testing companies and LSAC are a lot more bureaucratic. They move a lot more slowly. And so that creates an imbalance. And remote testing, of course, was introduced during the pandemic. It solved real problems at the time because, of course, in-person testing was closed, travel wasn't possible, students need to take their exam right away, and that was the best available option to do it remotely. But that doesn't have to be the permanent solution. At this point, a temporary solution is not working in 2026 and beyond. And so remote testing has created an opportunity and a vulnerability that should be discontinued given that cheating is rising and in-person is a viable option. So my recommendation is strongly encouraging both LSAC, Prometric, law schools all to push for a return to exclusively in-person testing. This may not happen overnight. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it is the best possible option to preserve the integrity of the LSAT.